Samurai Jack's legendary divine sword is a crazy piece of work, and there is so much about it that needs to be told, especially when it comes to its origin. I mean, for starters, it was forged through the combined power of 3 supreme deities from 3 great civilizations. And while its main purpose was always to destroy Aku and protect the innocent, the sword was so much more than a sharp blade that slashed things. It was a tool, a guide, and sometimes almost a moral judge. It could sense whether a person or being was good or evil, but most importantly, its true power depended on the heart of the person who wielded it. But enough build-up, let's cut to the chase, yeah? In this video, I'm going to explore the origin story of Samurai Jack's sword.
And you will bow to me.
What was the need for the sword's creation? To understand the origin of the sword and its epic history, we must travel far back in time. I'm talking millions and millions of years, around the time when dinosaurs still ruled Earth. But the story does not actually start on Earth. It starts in the far reaches of space, in the depths where there was nothing but darkness, emptiness, and cosmic silence. Long ago, in one such region of space, a black mass of pure evil emerged. It was not just a monster in the usual sense. It was a living darkness, a malignant force that threatened to consume everything and rid the universe of light and life. The gods could not let that happen. That is when 3 powerful divine beings came together: Odin, the great Norse god, Ra, the Egyptian sun god, and Rama, the heroic divine figure from Hindu tradition, and an avatar of Vishnu. These 3 gods pursued the Black Mass and engaged it in a fierce cosmic battle. The fight raged across space. The gods used their divine powers and weapons to burn away the darkness. In the end, they succeeded in destroying the Black Mass, or at least they thought they did. One fragment survived. That small piece of evil drifted away through space, unnoticed by the gods. It travelled across the cosmos and eventually reached Earth during prehistoric times. In the mythic history of Samurai Jack, that fragment crash-landed in the region that would one day become Japan, and its impact is shown as the event that wiped out the dinosaurs. Of course, that is show mythology, not real-world science, but inside the world of Samurai Jack, this is the cosmic accident that brought Aku's evil to Earth. After the crash, the fragment settled inside the crater it had created. Over time, it became a giant pool of black, tar-like liquid surrounded by tree-like spikes. This place became known as the Pit of Hate, surrounded by the Forest of Death. The Forest of Death grew around the pit, and the pit began devouring any creature unfortunate enough to come near it. Every time it consumed something, it expanded. The forest could be seen as an extension of the pit itself, almost like the limbs or tentacles of the same mindless eldritch organism. Over millions of years, the evil kept feeding, growing, and draining life. The Black Mass had not truly been destroyed. It had merely been reduced, weakened, and stranded on Earth. But it was recovering. It was waiting. It was becoming something new. That is why the sword eventually had to be created, because no ordinary weapon could stop this darkness. Against what creature was the sword created? As the fragment of the Black Mass grew, the Forest of Death eventually reached the lands of medieval Japan. Its spikes began encroaching on the Emperor's kingdom, impaling buildings, homes, and areas near the Imperial Palace. The Emperor saw what was happening and decided he could not stand aside. His pregnant wife begged him not to go. She asked him to send others in his place because he had a responsibility to his family and to their unborn child. But the Emperor reminded her that his country and its people were also his family. He had a duty to them as well, so he prepared to face the evil himself. The Emperor's men gave him a poison elixir, claiming it was the key to destroying the evil Black Pool once and for all. The Emperor rode with his warriors into the centre of the spiked forest. At the heart of it, he found the pool, but the forest itself seemed to come alive. Spikes erupted from the ground. The Emperor's men were killed or wounded one by one until the Emperor remained. Still, he did not give up. He dipped an arrow into the poison, chanted over it, and shot it into the centre of the pool. At first, it seemed as if the plan had worked. The evil appeared to retreat, but that was not what had happened. The poison did not destroy the darkness, it awakened it. The pool gathered itself into a towering spike that rose from the earth. Then that spike transformed into a colossal humanoid monster with branch-like limbs, horns, flaming eyebrows, monstrous teeth, and a body made of living blackness. The creature named itself Aku, which means evil. Aku then revealed the terrible truth. The Emperor had not destroyed him, he had freed him. The Emperor tried to fight. He shot arrows at Aku, but they were absorbed into the monster's body. He attacked with his sword, but the blade melted. Aku declared that no mortal weapon could harm him. Then he dragged the Emperor into the black sludge and bound him to a tree, forcing him to watch as Aku ravaged his homeland. That is the key point. Aku could not be destroyed by mortal weapons. Arrows, sword, poison, and human strength were useless against him. To defeat something born from cosmic darkness, the world needed divine intervention. It needed a divine weapon. Who forged the sword? As the Emperor watched his kingdom be destroyed, Sleipnir, Odin's mystical white horse, appeared and freed him from his bonds. Wherever Sleipnir stepped, flowers bloomed and light pushed back the darkness. The horse led the Emperor to the highest mountain, where he came face to face with Odin, Ra, and Rama. There, the gods explained the truth about Aku. He was not just a monster attacking one kingdom, he was a surviving fragment of the cosmic evil they had fought long ago. If left unchecked, Aku could spread across the world and eventually threaten all life. So the gods created a weapon that could harm what no mortal weapon could touch. They forged a magic katana for the Emperor, using their divine power and the righteousness of the Emperor's own spirit. This is what makes the sword so important. It is not simply a sharp blade blessed by the gods. It is a physical expression of good, courage, purity, and human righteousness, shaped into a weapon. That is why the sword could hurt Aku. It was not made to be a weapon of conquest. It was made to be a weapon of balance. A blade that could cut through evil because it represented everything Aku was not. So there you have it. That is how Samurai Jack's sword was created. What is the sword made of? The sword is not made of any normal earthly metal. The show never treats it like a regular katana forged in a blacksmith's workshop. Instead, it is a divine weapon created from the power of the gods and the righteous spirit of the Emperor. That matters because Aku had already proven that ordinary weapons meant nothing to him. The Emperor's original sword melted when he tried to attack Aku. Mortal force simply could not reach him. But when the Emperor returned with a divine katana, everything changed. Aku laughed at first, believing the Emperor had brought another mortal weapon, but when the Emperor slashed him with the blade, Aku was genuinely shocked. For the first time, he felt pain from a weapon. The Emperor revealed that the sword was forged from divine power and human righteousness. In other words, goodness itself had been given form. The strength of the gods and the purity of the human spirit had become a blade. That is why Aku could not ignore it. Aku transformed again and again, becoming monstrous forms like a dragon-like beast, a giant spider, and even the fallen soldiers of the Emperor. But the Emperor stood firm and used the sword to cut through each form. In the end, the Emperor used the katana to defeat Aku and trap him beneath the earth, where he took the form of a black diseased, craggy tree. But Aku promised he would return, and of course, he did. Why was Jack's father chosen to wield the sword first? Jack's father was chosen first because he was the one who confronted Aku before the sword was ever forged. He did not go into the forest of death because he wanted glory, he went because his people were in danger. That is the most important thing about him. His pregnant wife begged him not to go, but he believed his duty extended beyond his palace and family. His kingdom was also his family, his people were also his responsibility. That moral choice is what made him worthy. The sword was not meant for someone powerful in the usual sense. It needed a person righteous enough to wield divine power without corrupting it. The gods did not simply hand the weapon to the strongest warrior alive. They gave it to a man whose spirit had already proven itself through courage, sacrifice, and duty. That is why the human aspect of the sword matters as much as the divine part. Odin, Ra, and Rama gave the blade its cosmic power, but the Emperor's righteousness gave it its moral center. Without that human goodness, the sword would not be what it is. The Emperor became the first wielder because he had the heart required to carry it. Why can only Jack truly use it? Apart from his father, Jack is the only person who can truly use the sword because the blade was never meant to function like an ordinary family heirloom. Yes, it passed from father to son, but that is not enough on its own. The sword does not answer simply to bloodline or strength. It answers to purity, balance, and moral purpose. Jack inherited the blade because he was trained to carry his father's mission forward, but to wield it properly, he had to remain spiritually balanced. The sword gave its wielder immense power, and power always creates the risk of corruption. That means his user had to be righteous enough to fight evil without becoming like evil. This became very clear in Season 5 Episode 7, when Jack explained to Ashi how he had lost the sword. The story went back to the moment when Jack found what he believed was the last time portal. After 50 years trapped in Aku's future, this was everything to him. It was his chance to go home, return to the past, and stop Aku before the dark future could take shape. But Aku pulled him away before he could use the portal. Then Aku destroyed it and revealed that it had been the last one in existence. For Jack, that was not just a minor defeat. It was the collapse of everything he had spent decades fighting for. All the sacrifices, all the lonely roads, all the battles, and all the hope had led him to another closed door. Jack snapped. He lashed out at Aku in anger, but instead of fighting him directly, Aku mutated 3 innocent rams into monstrous creatures. Jack fought and killed them. Afterward, the rams returned to their normal forms, and Jack realised he had spilled innocent blood. Even though Aku had forced the situation, Jack's heart had fallen out of balance. That is when the sword left him. Jack tried to retrieve it, but the battle had damaged the area around the ruined portal. A pillar collapsed, and the sword disappeared into the pit. But the real loss had already happened inside Jack himself. He did not simply lose the sword lost him. How did Jack get the sword back? Back in the present, Jack and Ashi returned to that same mountain on the back of a giant bird. They searched deep inside the pit, but no matter how far they looked, they could not find the sword. At first, it seemed like the weapon had been lost somewhere in the rubble, but Jack finally understood the truth. He had not lost the sword had left him. That was a big difference, because it meant the real problem was Jack himself. The sword was not hidden in a cave or buried under a rock. Jack had to recover it by restoring his own spiritual balance. Ashi offered to help him find it, and Jack appreciated that. But this was one path she could not walk for him, so Jack entered deep meditation while Ashi stayed behind to guard him. That was a good thing, because while Jack searched inward, an army began climbing the mountain to kill him. Inside the spiritual realm, Jack came across a house in the middle of a huge body of water. A monk outside asked whether he was lost. When Jack admitted that he was, the monk invited him inside for tea. Jack wanted the sword, but first he had to face the state of his own spirit. Meanwhile, Ashi protected him from an army of warriors. She defeated them, but then another threat appeared higher on the mountain, the High Priestess, Ashi's own mother. The High Priestess gave Ashi one last chance to kill Jack. Ashi refused because Jack had helped her see the truth about Aku. Her mother tried to shame her by reminding her that Jack killed her sisters. But Ashi understood that she and her sisters had been raised as weapons, not people. The battle between mother and daughter ended when Ashi killed the High Priestess with one of her own arrows. Then Ashi collapsed from exhaustion while Jack remained deep in his spiritual trial. Inside the realm, Jack made tea. The monk tasted it and told him it was terrible because it lacked balance. Needless to say, this was not really about tea. Jack still carried anger, guilt and frustration. Until he faced that, the path to the sword would stay hidden. Then Jack's hallucination appeared one last time, furious and demanding answers from the monk. But this time, Jack understood. The hallucination was not a guide. It was his own rage, guilt and broken focus. He accepted that this anger had blocked him from the sword. Once he saw that truth, he dispelled the hallucination for good. With his balance restored, Jack finally stood before Odin, Ra and Rama, the same gods who had forged the sword for his father. Like the emperor before him, Jack was judged worthy. The gods returned his signature weapon. So yes, the sword came back to Jack because he became worthy of it again. Powers of Samurai Jack's blade. Jack's katana is a divine tool made for one main purpose, and as you already know by now, that purpose is Aku. At the most basic level, the katana can cut through many normal materials without becoming blunt, provided Jack has enough force behind the strike. That detail matters. Even though the sword is magical, it still depends partly on the wielder's strength, skill and condition. For instance, when Jack fought the Ultra Robots in episode 18, he could not initially cut through their adamantium armor without help. Once his strength was enhanced, he was able to slice through that same supposedly indestructible metal. So the blade had the potential, but Jack still needed the physical force to bring that potential out. The katana's real specialty appears when it faces mystical evil. The sword is especially effective against Aku and other supernatural threats. It can cut, burn, vaporize, or destroy creatures of evil in ways that ordinary weapons cannot. But that does not mean it can kill every magical being. Some beings have divine or protected origins of their own. The elementals, for example, were created by the goddess of water, and the sword could not destroy them in the same way it destroys Aku's evil. The minions of Set also had a divine origin, and the katana cannot simply erase them either. The sword also struggled against other magically protected weapons. The Scotsman's sword was covered in magic runes, and because of that, Jack's katana could not destroy it during their fight. This is important because it prevents the katana from becoming an automatic win button. It is divine, yes, but it still respects other divine or enchanted forces. The moral side of the sword is even more important. The blade's power is meant to serve good. Aku learned this the hard way when he tried to kill Jack with Jack's own sword. The blade could not harm Jack because Aku was evil and Jack was innocent. So although Aku could steal the sword, He can never truly use it against the pure of heart. There are other moments that make this rule more interesting. Jack once swung the katana at one of the Emakandi hunters, but the hunter caught the blade with his bare hands. One possible explanation is that the Emakandi, being honourable warriors, were not vulnerable to the sword's true killing power in the same way Aku's evil creations are. A similar idea appears in Samurai Jack Classics number 1, Calling All Creatures, where Jack strikes a sea monster but the creature remains unharmed because it has a pure heart. So yes, the katana seems to have a more awareness of some kind, or at least it responds to the nature of the target. However, the sword is not perfect in every situation. It may not always distinguish between true evil and innocence being corrupted by evil. When Aku twisted the rams into monsters, Jack killed them and later realised they had been innocent. That failure became one of the reasons the sword left him. A similar danger nearly appeared in episode 28 when children were corrupted by DJ Stilbator. If the innkeeper had not stopped Jack from using the katana, the sword may have harmed innocent children who were not truly evil, so the sword demands responsibility. It can judge evil, but Jack still has to judge wisely. The katana itself is also extremely durable. When it hits something it cannot harm, it tends to rebound instead of breaking. Jack can block and deflect incredible attacks with it, and unlike normal swords, it does not seem to require regular maintenance, though Jack does sharpen it at least once. After Jack passed his spiritual test in Season 5, the returned sword felt even more connected to him than before. Whether we call that an upgrade, or simply the restoration of its full power, the result was clear. Jack regained the confidence, focus, and moral balance needed to face Aku one final time, and that is why the sword is so important. It is not just the thing Jack uses to fight Aku, it is the physical symbol of Jack's entire journey: discipline, balance, compassion, courage, and the refusal to let evil define the world. So yeah folks, with that, I have come to the end of the video. If you liked it, please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Those 2 small clicks from you help us tremendously in bringing you more awesome videos. Stay safe and have a good one.